Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. Whatever we do, wherever we go, whether we're at work, at home, or at play, we all depend on others. The relationships we make, whether in a billion-dollar organization, our community, or our family, are as basic as fire, water, wind, and earth. So says best-selling author, speaker, coach, and trainer Laurie Beth Jones, who joins us tonight to talk about her book, The 4 Elements of Success, in which she unlocks the ancient wisdom of the elements of creation, almost said elephants there, and marries them with a modern personality theory to provide powerful new possibilities for collaboration, change, and success in all our relationships. Laurie Beth Jones, welcome.
Sandy, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Glad I never said elephants.
We'll talk about the elephant in the room later.
Sure. Well, Laurie Beth, before we delve into the 4 elements of success, let's back up a little and talk about your other books, which were not only massively successful, but also led to invitations to present to presidents of countries and companies, government and business teams, churches, ministries, and educators. And it all started with a book with a very bold title called Jesus, CEO, which was all about using ancient wisdom for visionary leadership. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I like to consider myself a problem solver and a translator. And I have a simple mind, and I think if you can make something simple enough for people to understand it, then they will use it. And if they use it, then the world can be a better place. So that was my framework and my filter for all of my books, really. And as I looked at Jesus, not necessarily from a religious standpoint, although I am Christian background, but more from a leader who only had 3 years to train 12 people. None of them were divine, and they went on to turn the world upside down, and they were willing to work for free and die for him. And as a business owner, I would love to have had a staff that was willing to work for free and die for me. And
die for you.
Exactly. We don't ask much, So it was, how did he do that? What things did he do with those individuals that got them so motivated that really they wanted to drop their nets, drop whatever they were doing and follow him? And it wasn't follow him onto his yacht. It was follow him sometimes into very dangerous and unhappy crowds. So what was that mystery that he had, and how could we access that kind of power to get our teams to move mountains?
So after that book came The Path, creating your mission statement for work and for life, which really underpins everything that you're doing now. So tell us first, what is The Path? Well,
I've got 14 books now, but each of them kind of flows from the soul of the other one. And as I was working with Jesus as a leader, it became clear to me that he was able to state his purpose in life in a single sentence. And as I look at other leaders, they had very simply articulated mission statements. One of my favorites was Joan of Arc, and she was given a mission by voices at the well that told her, save France. How'd you like that as your mission? Just 2 words, save France. And so the more powerful and the more simplicity is the closest to truth, I believe. So the more simply you can state what you came here to do and what you came here to do or sense that you came here to do, then you become a laser instead of just a candle flickering in the wind, you become a laser strong enough to cut through steel and shine through the darkness. And so the path was really about how do we find what our higher calling is. The listeners on your wonderful show are all seekers. They know there's something more. There's something more out there. So that's been my constant source of exploration. And then as I gather these seashells and tools, and I want to bring them back to the herd and say, look what I found. This is what it's about.
So you're a shameless sharer too, then?
Pardon?
You're a shameless sharer too.
Yes, that's very alliterative.
So at what point then did that expand into the path elements profile and this understanding of how we all operate with the elements?
Right. Well, as I was working, as you mentioned in your intro, I began getting invitations from all over the world, from leaders of companies and countries. And what I would ask them is, tell me who you are, draw me a picture of who you are, but you can't use a title or roles. Well, they would sit there. If they couldn't say they were a CEO or they couldn't say they were president of this, they were dumbfounded. And one of the things about Jesus that I love so much is that he was very visual. I am a shepherd, I am a gate, I am a door, I am living water. All of those things were something people could relate to personality-wise. So I started, and I've taken so many personality profiles, as I know you have, and I'm sure many of us have, and I think they all have something wonderful or meaningful to tell us about ourselves, our destiny. But I began exploring the elements of earth, water, wind, and fire because they're mentioned so much in ancient scripture. And it occurred to me that every culture, except the West, understands and respects the elements. The Native Americans had respected the elements. The words feng shui actually mean wind and water. It's the optimal placement of objects in a room so energy can flow. The Hindus certainly understand, the Ayurvedic medicine certainly understands and respects the elements. In the West, we think the elements are here to serve us and that we can control them, which is kind of ludicrous. But so in working with the elements, it became clear to me that this was something visual that leaders could grasp. And I'd say, are you more like fire? Or are you more like earth, solid, predictable? Are you like the wind? You're the messenger. Maybe you're like water. You take the shape of whatever you're poured into, and you want to give life wherever you go. Well, they just went crazy over it. And I'd tell people, I was working with CEOs in Cincinnati one day, and then I'd be working with nuns in New Orleans the next day. And people seem to grasp onto this concept that I'm more like one or two of the elements than the others. And maybe the people that I'm having conflict with are my opposite element. And so I worked with this for years and then was approached by a company that said, we can really put an online science behind this. And we did, and people can access it at pathelementsprofile.com. But we've just had so much fun. And as I had shared with you in our pre-show and our walks, just watching the transformation of people say, oh, I'm a wind and she's a fire, and we get into it because we both like the drama. Maybe one of us needs to back down once in a while and see if we can't warm things up instead of destroying the atmosphere. So that's the genesis of that concept for me.
So give us a thumbnail sketch of the, you've just given us a couple there with wind and
Sure.
fire, but expand on that with the other elements too.
Okay. Fire comes from the Latin word focare, which means focus. So, and the symbol I chose for fire is a triangle. Let's get to the point. Fires are hot, mesmerizing, excitable. They're always seeking the highest place. Fire is really the most vulnerable of the elements because any of the other elements can put it out, but it is the way shower, the blazer, the purifier, the refiner. Earth is solid, predictable, dependable. The symbol for earth that I've chosen is a square. All sides are equal. The earths are the personalities that measure twice and cut once. They like things to be done in order, and they do most of their work underground. And this becomes important when we're dealing with personality types. Fires, you can see everything they're doing. The earths, you can't see much of what they're doing, but everybody's working. The waters, beautiful element. They are the shapeshifters. They can become steam or ice or rain or snow. They always seek the lowest place. They seek calm. Water even hurling itself off a cliff as soon as it can wants things to be calm. The water personality types are the empaths. They sense what's going on when other people can't. For example, if you touch a body of water with your finger, the whole body of water ripples. You touch the earth with your finger and it doesn't even move the earth that you're touching. So that sensitivity of the waters is so beautiful. And then there's the wind. The wind is the messenger element. It tells you when there's a scent of fire or the scent of spring or when something is decaying. You can't always, the wind is the messenger. There's a song, The Answer, My Friend, is blowing in the wind, but it's not logical. You can't always nail down, well, you can't put the wind in a box and you could never nail it down and say, how do you know that? The wind just knows. So that's what makes it fun with the basics of the elements.
You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with best-selling author, speaker, coach and trainer Laurie Beth Jones about her book, The 4 Elements of Success. Still to come, how understanding the 4 elements can revolutionize your understanding of who you are and why you do the things you do. Stay tuned.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
America's service members and veterans are strong, forged out of bravery, sacrifice, and duty. Sometimes reaching out for help can be the most challenging and worthwhile mission of all. When you recognize something isn't right, make the call to the Veterans Crisis Line or Military Crisis Line. Dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1.
Welcome back. Laurie Beth Jones, in your book, The 4 Elements of Success, you explain that there are 16 possible personality blends. Like we're not all one thing. Earth might also have, a high percentage of wind and water with fire, etc. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the blends, we are complex creatures, and so none of us are all one thing. So the fourfold personality type, which is what many of the personality type assessments are based on, mean that there's 16 possible combinations with the elements. So you could be a fire, which is a double fire. And just to back up a little bit, when you take the online assessment, we ask you 16 questions, and you get an immediate report that shows you how much of each element you are. None of us have 0 of any element. But, for example, I am a fire wind, and my water and earth are much lower. So that means that the fire wind in me is going to react a certain way more than my earth and water. So there could be fire, earth, fire, water, fire, wind, and earth, double earth, earth, water, earth, wind, earth, fire. So each of the 4 has 4 possible components. And some people have moderate in all of the, or 3 out of the 4, and we call those people fusions. They're like the white blood cells of the body. They can become whatever is needed. They don't stick out in any one area. They're kind of this hovering mass of potential. They can move in any direction, and it's beautiful to see.
Why do you think there are so few of them?
I don't know. I think fusions tend to be very balanced. I think most of us act out of our passion, and that's what these 4-fold personality assessments show, sometimes as much as 80% of the time. And the reason it's important to understand this is it begins to affect your life choices and your careers and your decision making, the environment that you choose. And what we have found is when families get it, it really can change the dynamic of conflict resolution, because I believe when you have a team that has ostensibly similar goals, when there's conflict, 80% of it is conflict between opposite elements interacting, because the fires and earths want results, and the winds and waters tend to want relationships. So if you have a fire earth boss, she or he is going to be all about, what have you done lately? Give me the numbers. Are we winning? Whereas the winds and waters are going to say, well, did you know that Susan had a baby? Did you know Jim is getting a divorce? Did you know, Sarah lost her mom? So that different dynamic comes into decision making in organizations as well as families. And we've seen some amazing transformations once people get their essential elements and understand the essential elements of the people around them, and how they then begin to master the understanding, language, and vocabulary that can create harmony and move people forward in a very positive way.
I was fascinated in the book. I mean, you relate lots of examples, especially in the business world, and you talk about having been working with one company that were having challenges, and you did something very visual and experiential. You asked all the fires, to go to one corner of the room, and all the earths to get another, and so on and so forth. And then the CEO looked and saw that, in fact, he had one of one kind in one corner and a huge predominance of another in the other corner. And he took one look at it and said, "Oh my God."
Yes, and then once you understand that, so in this example, I think if it's the right one I'm thinking of, this CEO had a lot of fire earths, and he had one wind, and he himself was a water. So you can imagine the dynamic of a water leader who's all about relationships, dealing with fire earths who are all about results. And the wind is the innovator. The wind wants to keep things moving. The wind wants to bring in what's new and different and exciting. And we also do role play, and it's really fun to have a wind presenting to an earth committee. And the earth committee, their job is to guard the resources. Earth is the guardian of the resources. It's the long-term thinker. Its key word is this going to be sustainable, not only in spring, but in the winter. And the winds will come in and they'll say, we've got to move. It's new. It's hot. It's exciting. Oh, man, everybody's going to do this. This is going to be so much fun. And you can see the Earth Committee members just start to cross their arms literally over their chests and start leaning away from the wind because they perceive that language as dangerous. And the wind is pouring it on even more so because they believe the more forceful they are, they can get the results. It's like that Aesop's fable of the contest between the wind and the sun as to who could get the old man to remove his coat. And the wind just blew and blew and kept blowing harder, and the man kept, hugging his coat, and the sun just shone and shone and shone, and eventually the man took off his coat. So there's so many stories about how this applies in leadership, but again, also in families, as we discussed.
Well, another one that really impacted me was the story about the nun who was trying to get the Mother Superior to agree to have computers or some technological advancement in the school, and the Mother Superior was very resistant, and it was all in the languaging. Tell us how that one was resolved.
It was one of my most fun stories because it was young, let's call her Sister Marie. You could tell she was a wind, and she was in her 30s and very energetic. And Mother Superior had been there for probably 65 years and was the guardian of this. It was a convent and a school. It was very well loved in the community. And so this young sister took me aside and she said, "You've got to help me." She said, "We have got to computerize the school. And I've been telling her this for 3 years, but Mother, she just keeps saying, we can write out things by hand. This is the way it's been done. This is the way it shall always be done." And she said, "We're dying here." So I coached her a little bit and showed her the elements. And I said, it was obvious that Mother Superior was an earth. And I said, now I want you to say what needs to happen, but use 80% earth words in your presentation. So she studied, and she was a quick study. And she came back and she said, "Mother Superior, the work that this convent and school has done, our roots go so deep into this community. And we have created a system of branches where generations come and rest in our branches, and we provide shade." And literally, you could see Mother Superior started nodding and rocking, at the same time. And she was, "Yes, my child, yes." And she said, "And the longevity of this, we want this to continue for generations as it has been." And she said, "But I have to tell you, something is threatening our very foundation." And she was, "What is it, child?" And she said, "If we do not get fertilizer to the roots, they are going to shrivel and die. And it is happening even as we speak." And Mother Superior said, "Sister Marie, tell me, what is it we need to do?" And she said, "We need to computerize the schools." And she said, "Give me the order, child. Why haven't you told me this before?" She signed it right in front of her. So all she did was use earth words in her presentation.
So do you think that people give themselves away all the time? I mean, when you meet people, are you constantly just listening to what they're saying and then, okay, that one's a fire, that one's an earth?
Yes, and particularly once you begin to master, I don't know that anybody's a master of this. I've been doing it for 25 years, and I still feel like I'm ankle deep. But you begin to see patterns in behaviors. The fires and winds want the attention. They are the attention getters, the braggers, I can do it, choose me. They're the storytellers. And they tend to get a lot of attention because that's what they crave. And sadly, I think for the world, the earths and the waters who do most of their work underground, and they're not flashy and they don't need the attention, they're not the ones to raise their hands. They're not the ones to think they know it all. They're not the ones to say, I have the answer. They tend to sit back and watch and then act based on what appeals to them elementally about change. So, change is a big challenge in our culture and in the world really today. And so I have a pop quiz in my book. It's on page 139. And one of my favorite questions is, which elements are most naturally designed to handle change. And some people say, oh, it's the wind. And say, oh, maybe it's the fire. It's certainly not the earth. But when they think about it, the truth is every element is designed to bring about change. If you put a soil into the earth, a seed into the soil, it begins immediately to change that seed. Water changes everything that it touches. It literally is a solution for many things. Winds change, fires change. So the point I'd bring out to organizations and teams and families is that every element can embrace change, but it has to be spoken to them in a way that they get it and why the change is needed. And that's where you get into the mastery of the vocabulary and the language.
Do you think we could display one element at work, say, and another one at home?
Well, what we find is that if people are not in jobs that are in full alignment, we've had many people weep when they get the results of their assessments because they've been having to be in earth at work when really they're winds that need to be, the last thing they want is to be in a cubicle. So we can adapt, but the truth is, and my passion is for us to be operating 85% of the time in our highest element. It's not that if you're a fire, we want to change you into the water. We want you to go be fire, but understand and respect. Here's the key word in this: respect the pacing and the values of the other elements around you. And that's what makes for leadership and mastery.
You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with best-selling author, speaker, coach, and trainer Laurie Beth Jones about her book, The 4 Elements of Success. Still to come, how we can apply an understanding of the elements to improve our relationships with friends, colleagues, lovers, partners, and family. We'll be back in a few moments.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
We don't want your teddy bears. We don't want your shoes. We don't want your pencils, books, or blankets. We want to go home.
Around the world, 95% of children in orphanages have living parents, but poor and vulnerable families are often forced to give up children they love. Children need the love of a family. Orphanages are the problem, not the solution. Disability Rights International helps families around the world keep their children at home. Learn how you can help at drikids.org.
Welcome back. Laurie Beth Jones, before we talk about applying our understanding of the elements to things like family, love relationships, etc., I have a question for you. Fusion. Now, I'm going to confess I am a fusion. I was surprised when I turned out to be a fusion after doing your test. When I read the report, I took a little bit of issue with some of the comments in there. So what I want to know is, if you're something like a fusion, or if you happen to have two of the elements fairly close together, which one's going to win out? Or is it different according to the time, the moment, the situation, etc.?
Well, and I think the higher ones for you were waters and winds, correct? Am I right?
No, earth and fire.
What were they? Fire, okay.
Earth and fire.
There you go. Fire. So with the fusion, talk about adaptable. Fusions are capable of moving in any direction. So whatever the need is, you're going to go into that need and you say, well, this needs fire. Or you can say, wow, somebody needs some compassion here. I'm going to go be compassionate. The challenge for fusions is boundary setting, because it's very easy to lose yourself into the needs of others. So the fusion elementally tends to be a lot like water in that it is a shapeshifter. So as I said earlier, they're rare, and it doesn't surprise me that you are, because as we've discussed your career and your total desire to bring light into the world through communication like radio and through books and through every known channel of communication. It's that urgency that when I compare fusions to the white blood cell, it's the healer. You want to bring healing into a situation. So it's really amazing and beautiful.
Well, you raised a point there about, the downside of the fusion, and every element has its shadow side. Can you tell us a little bit about the shadow sides of the other 4 elements?
Absolutely. One of the things that's powerful, we've been told is powerful about this profile, is that you immediately see the strengths and the challenges. Everybody knows fire can light a room, and everybody knows fire can destroy it. Every element has that capacity. Waters can flood, earths can quake, winds can be hurricanes. So understanding innately and intuitively that this is a power that I've been given, and am I going to use it for good, or am I going to let it take control of me and the situation? So obviously the shadow side, as you call it, of fire, the challenge of fire is they like to get attention. They can burn people in the room. They lack empathy sometimes, and I'm talking about raw fires. Now, once you're enlightened, you can be an enlightened fire and be the most empathetic person in the room. A raw fire doesn't care so much about the others. They want to get somewhere. So fire is always hungry. You wouldn't leave a candle in a room and just go off, because it doesn't just want to burn where it is. It's sitting around looking at saying, wow, that curtain might look pretty good. I think I'll try to jump over there, because it always wants more and it always wants to be bigger. So I think that's one of the challenges of fires. We certainly see that in politics. The people running in our election today are obviously, we won't go there politically, but you can see the fire craving attention, and then we have another candidate that keeps turning out plans. So if you look at them elementally, you can see right away the difference there. The earths are the ones that they don't tend to show their emotions. They're not flashy. They might not be as charismatic as the winds and fires, but they are the ones that get stuff done. Without earth, nothing grows. And many times you will have teams that are wind fires, and they are stirring it up. But is anybody closing the sale? No, not unless there's an earth there to handle the details. So the earths, they can get boring. They can get in a rut. They can turn into bricks that don't want to grow anything. They just want to keep the status quo. Many times when we do the Awesome Elements exercise, you alluded to that earlier, where we put different elements in a room, the earths are the ones standing there and nobody else will move. The other people are moving and the earths are just staying where they are because they don't see a need to move unless somebody convinces them of the benefit of moving. The water, the shadow side of the water, is that it is a shapeshifter and it can disappear when things get hot. You might not always know what they're thinking, and like I said, they can turn into steam or ice or rain. And I think there's a poem that says something to the effect, or that some say the world will end with fire, but from what I know of ice, ice is nice and will suffice. You know, waters can get pretty cold and frosty if things are not going their way. And then the wind is all over. Go ahead.
No. Please continue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the wind is all over the map. And the symbol for the wind, by the way, is 3 squiggly lines, which in Greek is active intellect. And a lot of winds are being labeled ADD, ADHD, which are all negative connotations, attention deficit disorder. But the winds are the active element, and they are the only element that sees all of the elements at the same time. So you can't put them in a box. They don't always follow through. They'll pay as much attention as to a white piece of trash as a silken Japanese kite. You know, as long as something is in motion, the winds are happy. So it's up to the other elements to discern and say, okay, this goes in the garbage can. Wow, this is a winner. This is the idea that will take us home. So understanding the playfulness of the winds, they need to play, and they also need your attention. It's the only element that doesn't know it exists unless it sees the other elements moving. The wind needs to see the tree leaves moving, and it needs to see the grass swaying in order to know it exists. So if you want to torture a wind, you just ignore it. That's very painful for them. You want to praise an earth, you ignore them. They love that. Give them time alone. They are happy. The exact opposite for the winds.
Do you think we are born with our elements kind of fixed? I mean, and have you noticed in children at what age they seem to become obvious?
Well, this is what's been fascinating, and you and I talked about that earlier. Many parents will tell you that they can see their children's personalities by the age of 2. That there's tendencies that become visible, and certainly in my family, I had my nephew from the time he was 4. He wanted things a certain way. And my sister would go shopping, and she'd put things in the cart, and he would take it out, say, "No, Mommy, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that." And he was very, he cried if my father buttered the toast on the wrong side. He became an attorney. So, you know, he's a fire earth, very precise, and we could see that in him. And we've heard this from many parents, and sometimes parents, that's one of the beautiful things about this personality profile, is when you begin to see that your children are a different element perhaps than you will begin to learn to handle them differently. One story is that we had people who are trained in this, and it was a family dynamic where the father was very mad at the son because the son was on a basketball team, but he wouldn't take the shot. He was always passing the ball. And his father was saying, "I want you to be MVP. I want you to get a scholarship. I want you to score, score, score." Well, they did the personality profiles of the father and son, and it turns out the father was an essential fire, and the son was an essential water. So the fire, their idea of success is points and individual achievement. And for the son, it wasn't about him. He was there to support his teammates So it naturally was his desire to pass the ball to see them succeed. And when they got it, the father wept. And he said, "Oh, Jonathan," he said, "what have I been doing to you for years? Pressing this beautiful water son to be something he would never be. He wasn't created to be that, but could still be an amazing team player and a leader." Fires like to think they can all lead, but they're not all cut out to be leaders. But they think they can. That's the other shadow side of the fires is, it's ready, fire, aim. We know the answer. Don't bother us with the facts.
So we can see from this, how couples, get into trouble with one another. Same scenario, really. Different circumstances, one believing that the other should be a certain way when they're probably constitutionally incapable of being the way the other one wants them to be.
Exactly. We've had so many people say, "Oh my goodness, you just saved my marriage." Or I had one woman in a seminar say, "You could have saved me my last 2 divorces." Because in her story, she's a wind and she kept marrying earths. And she said, all my husbands, they started out saying, "We love your energy and excitement and how you love to travel and keep it, stirred up. And yes, we want to go to Paris. And yes, we want to go here." She said, but about the second year, they would say, I don't want to go. I want to sit at home. Who's going to feed the cat? Who's going to get the mail? So she was always attracting the opposite elements, but then it got old because they didn't want to do that anymore. So, I had someone say, "Well, if I'm a whatever element, who should I marry?" And I say, whoever you love. Just be aware of the elemental challenges and differences between you. And there was one couple that were both waters, and they just laughed and laughed, and they said, "Oh, we just can't go to a buffet because we never can decide." Well, you decide. No, you decide. No, you decide. You decide.
Laurie Beth, I'm going to hold it right there because we are about to go to a break. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back. Laurie Beth Jones, is there a gender bias with the elements? Do you find that more men tend to be one, more women tend to be another?
No, that's the beauty of this. I think there's absolutely no gender bias. Culturally, I think we expect men to be fires and women are supposed to be waters. We're supposed to be the earths and waters that just, make everything grow and make things do. And culturally, men are supposed to be the winds and fires. But what we find is that it is not gender related at all. And many times that's what's so freeing about this. We had one woman who's become one of our greatest consultants, and she was a pastor's wife, and she thought she was water. Nobody dances backwards more than a pastor's wife. And it came out that she was fire, and she said she cried for 2 days. She didn't want to be a fire. She was supposed to be a water. But I'll tell you what, when she grasped that, the way that this was the way she was created, she became a human dynamo, and her husband was so happy that she was freed from that bondage of what she should be acting like. And she just is, it's amazing the things that she's accomplished. She's training this all over the world. And so no, there's no gender bias, and it really isn't even age related. I shared with you earlier, Sandy, too, that we've done this with young people, certainly teenagers and preteens. And we did this, I had a grant and did this with a group of 2,000 pre-teenagers, and they got their elements, and then we came back 9 months later and retested them to see how much they remembered. And they had an 87% recall of their element and a 67% recall of their best friend's element. And, the kids were coming up and saying, well, I'm a fire, and, Jim's a water, and I look out for him, and his friend says, yeah, and I tell him when he's getting out of bounds. And it's just beautiful to see because, we're all striving for roles and we're all striving for an identity. There's a tremendous search for identity. It's all a search for, I think, identity and expression. And so when a young person understands that they are like fire, that's beautiful because it gives them an immediate sense of power. They're not going to become powerful when they get their degree or when they get a car or when they win an award. They're powerful right now. The question is, how are they going to use it? And how are they going to work with the other elements around them?
What I find interesting about the fact that there is no gender bias, you've done a lot of trainings with major companies like Tyson Foods, Nestle, Neiman Marcus, Pfizer, Citi Financial, and American Express. Now, I can imagine when CEOs of such large corporations hear that there is no gender bias, and what we should be looking at is the elements, bringing the elements together that we need to create a successful team. That must make some people's hair stand on end, and I bet the women all cheer.
Well, they do. And one of my greatest cases was a water leader who had a board that was mostly fire. And they had been a little impatient with him because he would take a little longer to do things, but he got amazing results. And when they understood the dynamic, it really freed him up to say, look, we're going to spend 25% of each meeting on relationship building. And the fires were saying, who cares? Why would we spend money on that? And he was leading a merger of 15,000 people in a multi-billion-dollar industry. And he said, and this is why mergers fail, and this is why blended families fail, because everybody assumes that just because there's a new title or a new name over the door, everybody's going to get along. That does not happen. But elementally, we have colleges that are using this for roommate matching services. There's a Pathlete Academy, we call them Pathletes for athletes, in Orlando, where young people who are groomed to be tennis prodigies or golf prodigies are learning their elements. And the house parents are learning the elements, and their teams and their coaches, so that they can use that to encourage one another. So it is really fun in companies to have this aha and this consciousness awareness of, excuse me, Jim, you're always coming in here with crazy ideas, but now that you're a wind, I get it. And in fact, if you don't come in with crazy ideas, we're not going to move because you are the innovative element. You're the most naturally the one that wants to move things forward. So it's just been beautiful to apply the patterns and to see what can happen. And Sandy, can I just share one particular story about families that has really resonated with a lot of people? Yeah.
Please do.
So we did this training with the Department of Education, State Department of Education. And I came back 2 weeks later to do follow-on coaching, and this woman stopped me in the hall and she said, I've got to tell you what happened. She said, our family was known as the zoo because all we did was yell and scream at each other. And she said, after I took your training and I had my whole family take the elements, this is what we discovered. My husband's a fire, an essential fire. I'm a wind. Our 13-year-old daughter is a fire, and our 8-year-old son is an earth. So when you look at that, okay, you have 2 fires, a wind, and 1 earth. You could see intuitively why there's a lot of drama going on. And the one who's suffering is this earth off in a corner, and there was no water, very little water in any of the essential. So she said, we got this. And so now we've really begun applying it. So my husband would come in and he would, trip over a bike or something, and he'd start yelling, and I'd be the wind, and I'd jump into it, and my daughter would start yelling, and it was just constant conflagration. She said, but now my husband, he'll come in, he'll trip over the bike, and he'll start yelling, but then as a wind, I back off because fires can't continue burning without fuel. He'll calm down and he'll say, honey, he said, you're the wind. What am I missing here? And then they realized that their 13-year-old fire daughter had no authority in the family. Fires need authority. So they said, Elaine, you be in charge of one of the things that was causing conflict was nobody was doing their chores. You're in charge of drawing up of the chores. Tell us, including the adults, who does what. You're the boss. Well, she loved that. Dad, you're going to do this. Mom, you're going to do this. I'm going to do this. Billy's going to do this. And the 8-year-old son, who was an earth, she said, we had him draw up the chart. And she said, I have to tell you that within 2 weeks of getting this and beginning to apply it, we have gone from being a zoo to being a highly functioning team.
Wow.
Within 2 weeks.
That's amazing. So how would you, if you've got young children, how would you find out what their element is? Because the way the questions are constructed, I can't imagine it's that easy for an 8-year-old to do it for themselves.
No.
Answer the question.
Yeah. No, it's validated to the age of 12. But
right.
You can begin, in my book, just I've poured as much of my research into the books and there's talks online and all of that. But really it's about looking for patterns. So the pacing, again, the earths and waters, their pacing is slower and underground. They tend to be more deliberate and more thoughtful about things. The winds and fires want to move quickly and they want to get the attention. So if you have a child that, tends to want to be alone or cries because someone stepped on an ant, you just become more sensitive to what it is, how they're reacting to the world. My whole desire is like this radio program and the host of this whole, radio station. It's consciousness raising. If we can begin to be conscious that not everybody is like us, but everybody brings a value. And so if you can see that your 8-year-old son loves to scatter her toys and run around in circles and whinny like a horse, maybe she's a wind. And if you can see that, let's say your son is a very sensitive and thoughtful one, maybe he cries easily. It's not gender, it's that water. They're going to be needed to be treated differently.
Laurie Beth, I'm afraid we're almost out of time. Tell us how people can get the pet profile done, and very quickly what it involves.
Yes. You go to pathelementsprofile.com, like path, walking a path, pathelementsprofile.com, and you can take the assessment. It will guide you through. I think the investment is $28.95. And it will be the best $30 you've ever spent, because you get a very extensive report about how you are in the world, and you begin to understand how others see you, and those are not always the same two things.
Laurie Beth Jones, thank you so much for joining us today. Absolutely fascinating.
Sandy, thank you so much. Thank you for all your listeners and the work they're doing in the world.
Well, if you want to know more, you can go to lauriebethjones.com to find out about Laurie's workshops and seminars, and also pathelementsprofile.com. The book is The 4 Elements of Success. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I hope you'll join me next week for another edition of What Is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.